welcome to Tom Myers versus the rest of the world. As the transition to a Biden administration is postponed and efforts are made to deny the election results, it's apparent that Donald Trump believes he has served up his vision of this country to Americans like he's serving up a big bowl of mashed potatoes. And all the Biden voters, 79 million Americans, have put their dicks in it. I would imagine Donald Trump is furious at his campaign advisors for losing this election, at which point his campaign advisors will tell him, "But Donald, we didn't want you to panic. We just like playing it down. We always played it down." There is hope for Trump's chances of victory. If you count only the votes in states where someone has threatened to throw a tall boy bar table at my head while I was on stage, then Donald Trump wins the Electoral College unanimously. It looks like Trump will retire like most aging white New Yorkers, move to Florida, play golf, and bitch about non-whites, the ones who don't change his linens. The Republican Party is so far gone from its days when it could call itself the Party of Lincoln. The only way they could accurately use the term 7 years ago is when they answer the question, when was the last time anyone in your family shook hands with a black person? Joe Biden won Georgia and now gets an additional 16 electoral votes. It's comforting that Charlie Daniels is not around, so we don't get the lyrics, "Joe Biden went down to Georgia. He was looking for a vote to steal." Amy Coney Barrett has already heard a few cases as a Supreme Court justice. Now is her biggest challenge. It wasn't her confirmation. It's now that she's on the court and she has to stop Brett Kavanaugh from trying to fuck her. Supposedly, there is a group of pro-Trump truck drivers who are planning to go on strike. Good. No trucks splashing water, mud, and other debris on my vehicle, and, as a bonus, no truck stop waitresses being groped or sexually assaulted. In Baltimore, a smell emanating from a clothing donation bin was revealed to be a dead body. It's nice to see my fellow Marylanders give us a preview of our return to post-COVID normalcy. And now, on with the show. Please welcome our panelists, Jeff Hysen and Abby Mello.
Hi, nice to be here.
Hello.
Abby, missed you last week.
Yeah, glad to be back.
I know you talked about taking Xanax to deal with the election, and being from Baltimore, we just thought you overdosed on it.
Hey, it is prescribed to me for insomnia. Yeah, no, it has been. I would be lying if I said that anxiety is at 4 a.m. I don't know. What's your 4 a.m. like, everybody else? Because mine is either like, remember that girl that bullied you in junior high, or it's like, hey, you forgot to put the laundry in the dryer. And I'm like, oh, thank you. That's helpful. It's never, I don't know. 4 a.m. in my brain is a strange time.
My 4 a.m. is sending a tweet and then thinking this will probably get me suspended for a few days, but fuck it.
Wow, you're active in the morning. I'm just in my own brain trying to fall back asleep.
You're both young. I'm over 60. My 4 a.m. is a trip to the bathroom.
I thought you were just going to say that's when you actually get up.
I'm pretty sure most comics' 4 a.m.'s trip to the bathroom are just as exciting, if not more so. Some might even involve an ambulance.
That's right.
Jeff, what have you been up to this week?
Trying to avoid keeping up with Trump's tantrums and his whining and his frivolous lawsuits, because doing that, paying attention to that gives them credence. And we should be looking forward to the promise of the new administration at noon on January 20th. And a new cabinet, and not his golfing and his refusing to leave office. So I'm trying to avoid thinking about that.
I mean, it's frightening, the fact that Donald Trump is firing everybody. So he's putting all these active heads in charge of the government, and they're only going to be there for 2 months or so. The last thing you want to hear if there's some major crisis, you hear the agency head go, "Well, I don't know how to fix this. I'm a temp. Yeah. I'm just doing this because COVID shut down all my band's gigs, man." Anyway, please join me in welcoming our guest, Shereen Kassam.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show, Shereen.
Thank you.
How's your observations of this election been?
It's been different because I didn't realize how many racists lived in my neighborhood until this election happened. I mean, when they put the signs out, I was like, oh, but then when they started putting the flags out, I was like, okay, we shouldn't go for a walk anymore.
I mean, it's amazing, all the flags, you would have, because I remember like the same, neighbors I have, like they would complain about people, driving down the street with rap music blaring from their stereos at 10, 11 o'clock at night. They're now flying flags that say no more bullshit and fuck your feelings. Like that somehow doesn't violate the neighborhood association.
Yeah, the HOAs. I said the same thing. Well, it's funny because my neighbor has the no more bullshit sign. So my dad was like, "Oh, well, you're safe. You have a Democrat next door, so nobody's going to harm you." And I was like, "Dad, you're not understanding the sign."
How far are you? You say you're in Orlando. How far are you from the tourists?
About 10 minutes.
Do they drive by this, or is that a different part of the city?
They don't drive by this, but when the election was happening, like that weekend, on all the major street corners, especially the tourist street corners, there were Trump supporters with their flags and their bullhorns screaming. It was funny. They were screaming blacks for Trump, but there was no black people on the street corner. But they had signs that said blacks for Trump and Latinos for Trump. They just couldn't find those people.
Zero was the number.
But they do exist. I mean, they're there. But yeah, it's been interesting, the election. Just the whole idea of, my parents came here from Africa. My parents came in the 70s when Idi Amin, the dictator, was in Uganda and made all the Asian people flee and within 24 hours. And we came to America, and now it's funny because we came here for democracy, and now we're having like the same issue here, right? It's like violence and people protesting, and it's out of control, and you're just thinking, why did we come here?
And you're in Florida, so the big difference is you guys make the bang bus videos. But your governor is Ron DeSantis, right?
Yes, he's so far up Trump's asshole. I've never seen him before.
Well, when I think of Ron DeSantis, it's like, have you ever done the thing where you take a marshmallow peep and you put it in the microwave and watch him blow up?
Yep.
See, Ron DeSantis to me looks like you take the peep, you put it in the microwave, and then you just leave the microwave on while you go off and run an errand.
Yeah, pretty much. That's probably why he doesn't believe that COVID exists.
And why, your state's leaders are pretty much the personification of every single Florida man headline. They thought, okay, we'll be in charge of not doing anything about this health scourge.
Didn't he tell order the schools to open?
Yes.
Ordered them to open, removing any local authority over schools. And I think he told the health official not to count COVID. Is something like that? Do I have that right?
I'm not sure about the second one, but he definitely asked to open schools. And he moved us into phase 3 real quick. Like he mandated we don't have to wear masks anymore, but I'm not sure. He probably said not to count either. I wouldn't be surprised.
No, because they did interview someone. It was some state official who was fired.
Oh, yes.
She was still using the data that she was getting.
You're right.
To go ahead and keep on the COVID statistics.
Yeah.
And you'd think he'd want he's more taking care of Trump than he's thinking about all the people who won't go to Florida because they're afraid of COVID based on the lack of restrictions.
No, he knows that there's, however many million people in this country that are absolutely going to go to Florida knowing that they can run around maskless and do whatever they want because they don't believe in it.
Well, plus Trump is one of DeSantis's voters now. I mean,
that's true.
I mean,
Florida's
talk about the biggest pain in the ass constituent ever.
But yeah, if you came to Florida, you wouldn't even know COVID. We had COVID here. The restaurants are packed. The bars are packed. People don't wear their masks. There's no nobody, not even from the beginning, there was no enforcement on a mask. So I know in some cities you guys had security guards saying you can't come in without a mask. We don't have that here.
You make me feel very good about my decision, Shereen. My brother and I inherited a house in Boynton Beach, and we fled in mid-March when this hits, and we would have been back a few times by now. And I love going for spring training, but I have no intention, neither does my brother, of going back to Florida because of what you're saying. So we sold the house. So you're making me feel very good about this.
Anyway, this will be the last show that's sponsored by the Florida Board of Tourism. So while I go off and look for more sponsors, we'll go ahead and move on. There's no chance that Donald Trump will ever admit defeat in the 2020 election. In fact, he's so desperate he wants every voter in the country to write him a letter letting him know how they voted. There's no word on whether he wants it delivered through Louis DeJoy's United States Postal Service or carrier pigeon, the latter of which would likely be quicker thanks to Louis DeJoy. In fact, an improvement in the Postal Service would be appointing Newman from Seinfeld as Postmaster General. I would send Trump something letting him know how I voted, but the Secret Service would stop me before I lit the bag of dog shit on the North Portico. Here is Trump redressing his grievance via phone that the hate fuck of information networks, Fox, airs rallies where his domestic arch nemesis and predecessor, Barack Obama, is addressing the crowd.
And some have said that Barack Obama's come out to be the bad cop, to go after you. One of the things he said last night was he's going around spreading COVID like he's a carrier because he cares more about having these big crowds than he does keeping people safe. Do you want to respond to the former president?
Well, fortunately, he's drawing flies. He's not getting anybody to go listen to him too much. Actually, Fox puts him on more than anybody else, which is sort of shocking to me because Fox has changed a lot. And somebody said, what's the biggest difference between this and 4 years ago? And I say Fox. It's much different. You still have great people. But you're three of them.
But you know, Mr. President, can I just say one thing? What they try to do at Fox,
in terms of
but
politics.
we just want to show both. Unlike the other networks, they were trying to show both sides. So, hey, here's President Trump live, here's Joe Biden live. Because we feel it's a responsibility to sell.
We report, they decide.
Yeah, right. So I don't think it's an endorsement of anybody.
That right there is the proverbial hostages preventing the hostage taker from executing them.
Can you imagine the horror of those three when they set him up with a softball question? Say something bad about Barack Obama. That's basically what the question was leading to, and he couldn't even do that, and he attacks their network.
Yeah, I've never watched Fox News. That was the first time I've actually seen Fox News. Is it common for them to interview the president like that? Do news channels have the president on where they allow him to rant and rave?
He probably calls in every morning.
just Fox. So
just Fox. Okay.
On news channels, no.
What surprised me, I don't know if it surprised you, Abby, was that they were sitting fairly apart, and they usually sit on a couch. And I avoid that channel also, but I didn't realize that they were almost social distancing.
Yeah, I've never seen it before. What didn't surprise me was that every man in the room was talking over the one woman.
Including President Trump.
Well,
meaning they were talking over him too.
And they're afraid that he's going to start his own network.
Parlor Squared or something.
Of course, what Trump supporters lack in consistency of thought, they make up for in overconfidence, as we can see from these two groups of Trump supporters asking two different things in two different states.
Stop them count! Stop them count! Stop them count! Stop them count!
There's nothing like that divide between conservatives who don't want every vote to be counted and conservatives who want every vote to be counted.
I think it's very reminiscent. I mean, actually, they're all very good at math, right? It's Trump math. It's if you keep testing, you will find more cases. And so it's very much the same sort of thing, right? If you keep counting, you'll find more Biden votes. But if you stop counting, you won't find more Biden votes.
I love that. Great analogy.
Very good.
Not one to be denied a voice by those they deem the fake news media, these Trump supporters provide an introspective and emotional view, as we can see in this video.
What is it that brings you out here tonight, ma'am?
I just believe in America, and I think Trump is the president, so.
I think he's the greatest president we've ever had. I'm too emotional. But I'm really thankful that I've been invited here, so.
Tell me what makes you emotional about the president?
What he's done for the country, all his policy changes, what he's done for Black and brown Americans, and what he's done for Hispanic people, And this, I'm trying to think. And you know, we have Colombians, we have Venezuelans, we have Cubans that have come here from their socialist country and now live in Florida, and they're for Trump. We have all these states that are open, and some of these states that aren't open, I don't understand why. The COVID figures they're projecting right now, in my opinion, are a hoax. They're not as high as they are. The media is being false, and our Father who art in heaven is very angry with the media. He's very angry with Biden and Kamala Harris. They're going to hell, and they're going to have to ask forgiveness for that. And if they don't, they're going to hell. I've asked the Holy Spirit, I've asked the angels to take him, have Satan give him a tour of hell, and I hope it happens soon.
I think we're already there, judging by that guy.
How much worse could that guy be feeling? Like, what was that? I mean, what?
I found myself agreeing with something he said, though. He said that he gets very emotional thinking about what all that Trump has done for the country and for Black and brown Americans and for Latino Americans. I get very emotional about that also.
Agreed.
Yeah.
In the opposite direction.
Right. Yes.
Shereen, you have got to have some thoughts on this Florida man.
Well, there was two things that were really bugging me. One, his voice did not match his face. Like, that is not what a crackhead sounds like. That is all that I could keep thinking about. I was like, that is not the guy's voice. And then the second piece was like, I was like, oh my God, Tom, stop playing this, because I could see myself like listening to this and start like, sometimes I get scared, like how these people get brainwashed. Like, how much do you have to listen to this to actually fall into that brainwashed category? Like, that scares me. I was just like, oh my God, if I keep listening to him, I might actually agree with something he says.
I actually found it soothing. You know, there was the piano music in the background, and that piano music actually helped to cover up the fact that, you know, he sounded like a dick.
No, he did. But then I was like nervous. I was like, oh my God, if he keeps going, I might get brainwashed. Like, the music was like that hypnosis, like, you will believe. Brown people are bad. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm a bad person.
And I know this is an audio podcast, but Tom showed us the video, and he was wearing a mask despite the fact that COVID's overrated, except he wasn't wearing it over his face. He was wearing it on his neck and his chin. If the only mask that you had was a Trump mask, would you wear it correctly? No, you'd want to just kind of keep it off to the side. Maybe wear it as an ascot, you know.
Did anybody else just feel like that was a real roller coaster of emotions? Like, I'm all for a sensitive man. I appreciate that he is willing to get, you know, very open on camera, but that was just an up and down. I mean, that was all over the place. I thought he was going to cry for a while. Then he got real hopeful. Then he started talking about Jesus. Then he got vengeful. Like, it was all stages of like grief in a 1 minute clip.
Abby, you just gave him a line for his Parler profile, called a sensitive man by a liberal.
That's a badge, right? That's a badge of honor.
Right.
Hey, a liberal once called me sensitive, so this can't be a microaggression.
It's understandable that Trump supporters want to stop the counting of ballots in certain cities. It's likely they're not accustomed to big numbers, as they don't have that many toes to count. Here are some of his troglodytes taking to the streets in Pennsylvania to express their dismay at the election results.
It's legal for them to count votes in Pennsylvania 2 days after the election on November 3rd?
Yes.
You're wrong. Go. I don't even want to talk to you.
When we went to bed on election night, when they told us they stopped counting, we woke up and there was a vertical spike right for Biden, 130,000 votes approximately. That's when I knew there was a problem.
Now, as my buddy Steve Bannon says, if you're going to lie, be believable about it. Because you do not have 138,000 votes come in and 135,000 of them come in for Biden.
How do you go from almost losing 200,000 in 5 hours, you're down to 30,000 votes away from winning?
A lot of Democrats voted in the mail, they voted absentee, they voted before election day. And in a lot of states, those election day votes got counted first. That's why Trump had that early lead. And then once those other votes started getting counted, that is how Biden caught up and
so
overtook.
where are all the Trump ballots that were mailed in?
Well,
Why are we finding them laying around in different places?
But Trump was telling everybody not to mail it in, right? That's why there's so much more mail-in Democratic votes, no?
No.
It's amazing how awkward and not self-aware Trump supporters are. What, you don't believe there are people out there who didn't vote for Donald Trump? No.
No, that was his answer. He just said no.
Yeah, nobody voted by mail except for Trump and his family.
So I actually heard one of the conspiracies that they were one of the people was talking about was this incident, the 130,000 votes. So they actually dug down and found out. I listened to a different podcast today. I will not plug it, where they actually investigatively reported this, and it was a Trump supporting ballot person who accidentally just fat fingered the zero. It was like 13,000 or something, and they caught it almost immediately. So there, it is true that at 4 a.m. there was this insane spike that was more votes than even people in the county. And it was literally somebody just late night fat fingered an extra zero in, and they immediately counted it or caught it. But it was a Trump voting election judge who was the one who made the mistake in favor of Biden.
And what's amazing is that the last big case of voter fraud was in 2018. It was the 9th congressional district in North Carolina, and it was done by the Republican candidate. So, of course, they're aware of all these tricks that could go on because, they're the ones trying to pull them off.
And also, apparently, none of these people have ever heard of voter suppression, which is a whole other story. They're worried about the people that got to vote, and they're not even talking about, the decades and hundreds of years of people who didn't get to vote at all.
Which is still going on now. I mean, that's probably why they don't think there are that many people who could have voted for Joe Biden because, they think,
they're doing such a good job of suppressing all of the votes of minorities.
They've all been admitted that they're basically doing that.
Thank you, Stacey Abrams.
That's right.
Yes. And your team.
Voters feeling like their voices aren't being heard is not new. In fact, in the days before Trump, various candidates took up the mantle of speaking for those who felt disenfranchised and left behind by America moving forward to a more inclusive society. One such candidate, 1968, Alabama Governor George Wallace, tapped into those sentiments during his campaign, and his supporters reacted in kind, as we can see in this PBS documentary footage.
They've never paid any attention to anything that the people of your state and my state did or said in the past. They ignored us and looked down their nose at us and called us everything under the sun. And I'm sick and tired of it, and I resent it because I feel that the people of our region are just as intelligent and refined and cultured as the people of any region of the United States or the entire world. And that's no reflection upon the people of any other section of our country. Why don't you young folks get out of the auditorium? And I tell you what, I may not teach you any politics if you'll listen, but I'll teach you some good manners. I'll teach you some good manners, I'll teach you some good manners.
He was one of the few candidates that in my experience, that people would literally fight you over. They would hit you with their fist. I mean, the feelings were intense.
I tell you, they ought to take them people over there and put them in a bunch of cages and ship them off in a ship and dump them.
The people that really believed in Wallace were the people that he would term as the rednecks, the wool hats, the hayseed, the footlog walkers, the square dancers, the guitar pickers. They did believe that somewhere out of the ranks of the poor people that some person would ultimately rise and represent their thoughts, their ideas, and their wants and their wishes. And George Wallace was the man.
I mean, the year and the name of the candidate is different, but, the formula is the same. What you do is you gather, a like-minded, homogenous crowd, validate their belief that anyone not like them is an other threatening to take away their way of life. I mean, you can see from the video, the reactions, I mean, the emotions, I mean, the fighting that was going on. I mean, it's 50 years later. What's changed?
Right. It's a precursor to what we had. And this is the same place, the same state with that great culture that he mentioned that's just elected an ignoramus football coach as the senator who didn't even know the 3 branches of government.
I would like to thank that narrator for giving me like a dozen more synonyms for redneck. I always felt like, it's not enough. I need other things to say. I mean, he listed at least 10.
Probably because he's been called each of those.
Sad because this is not in the brochure when you come to America. This is the part they leave off the brochure. They need to make special brochures for people when we're coming here, like what cities to live in and what cities to avoid, because we didn't get that.
No, you think that would be in the brochure?
It should be in the brochure. Like Muslims should not move to these cities or these states. Black people should not move here. Hispanics should not move here.
My dad teaches at a school in Arkansas, and they get a lot of international students from all kinds of places. And I can only imagine if you came here to America and you were like, Arkansas, I mean, just like, what if that was your only experience?
Yeah. And then calling your family back home to tell them like what America really is. And they're like, no, that's not what we see on CNN.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're like, no, there's backyard professional wrestling. It's amazing.
And pig wrestling.
Yeah, there are no Hollywood liberals here.
And cow tipping.
You can wear camo at like any occasion.
And on that note, that's our show. I want to thank Jeff Hysen, Abby Mello, and Shereen Kassam.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
And now, my final thought. In the weeks before January 20, and in this final year of humanity, as is left on life support, we can see the effects Donald Trump has had on this country. For instance, we have seen how much of a deal maker he can be. He's managed to combine 2 or 3 waves of a global pandemic into one major wave. How uniquely American. White House spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany said, of course Trump was going to the inauguration because, in her words, he's the one being inaugurated. I know she had COVID, but I find this a fascinating case study in the effect it can have on one's cognitive capabilities. Mm-hmm. So what does life hold for us in a post-Trump America? Well, this year's House of Representatives freshman orientation session provides a clue. It was different because of COVID. For example, Ashley Hinson, a new Republican representative from Iowa, had to do her orientation virtually because she is isolating after having tested positive for the virus. Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, a QAnon supporter who would have failed her background check simply at the point when the underpaid paper pusher at the local unemployment office inevitably laughed at her resume, tweeted, I proudly told my freshman class that masks are oppressive. In Georgia, we work out, shop, go to restaurants, go to work, and school without masks. My body, my choice. It's a shame her parents didn't take that my body, my choice sentiment more seriously. Missouri Democrat Cori Bush, who wore a Breonna Taylor face mask, was misidentified as the paramedic murdered by police in Louisville, Kentucky, by some Republican members of Congress not familiar with who Breonna Taylor was, just as they are unfamiliar with the last time their wives even bothered to touch their micropenises. In short, we're fucked. But on the bright side, we're less fucked in that, as of the first run airing of this episode, Trump has only 61 days to flush what remains of this country down the tubes, like the remnants of all the fast food compacted in his small intestine. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, allow me to officially welcome you to our status as a third world country. Good night. This episode was written and hosted by Tom Myers, with panelists Jeff Hysen and Abby Mello, and guest Shereen Kassam. Theme music by Jeroen Vandenhurk. Executive producer Tom Myers. Executive producer for ipmNation, Matt Connarton. For more information, visit tommyers.us.